Wanted to give a quick rundown on how I set my boat up. Not that I'm any sort of professional or anything like that. I just kind of want to structure a few things for my YouTube channel, and as I start to put out more content, it's easy to have this baseline. I'm actually probably going to end up doing this video 3 or 4 more times as I kind of refine what I want to talk about and how I want to do different things. But I don't see a lot of videos out as far as here's how I use my boat from people that really aren't professional anglers as much. I'll be honest, I have no idea what I'm doing, and for the most part I don't catch fish, so it's really hard to make YouTube videos. But here's a rundown of how I kind of set up some of the compartments as they go. This is one of the back compartments. As you can see, there's just stuff in here, just trash bags, a few snacks. We'll go from the back to the front as I have a lot more things set up in the front. The basic specs, I guess, is at AVX 2080 Vexus. I think mine's a 2023. So here is the rear compartment. I just have a few little storage items back here, tie downs, rope, things like that that I don't go through very often, or go for very often outside of the, right at the dock. I did replace, it's actually the third time that I've replaced these seat pedestals. So I 3D printed an insert in there. I actually have a spare one right here going down to a 3/4 inch. And so far that seems way more stable. And it's a replaceable part that I can make at home if it breaks. As far as the actual boat specs, if people have questions on it, I can do that later. There's plenty of dealers that have different boat specs and can spec out a boat way better than I can. That's going to be the same thing when it comes down to electronics. Here's Trisha's compartment. That's where she keeps all of her tackle. A lot of crappie stuff in there. That one's full, but these rear compartments on this boat are huge. So if you have someone with you all the time, it's really nice to kind of have that set up and have that much space. Live wells are what you'd expect. Mine are dirty, don't worry about that. Nothing crazy there. They're big enough to catch or handle all the fish that I catch. Center compartment, I had a 1880 before this, and it had the center seat, which was nice, but I think this tray is so much better. A lot more go, so we keep some little things like band-aids, stuff for fish and fizz. Everything that I put inside this compartment, for the most part, I try to keep inside these little bags. They're all breathable, nothing really gets wet. Everything just kind of sits in here. It's good to go, it's there whenever we need it. Spare batteries for your scale that need to be charged. One thing I do kind of every time I get on the water is make sure that I put my car keys and whatever else in another waterproof container so I don't go anywhere past that. I've found that the net sits about perfect back here. They've actually changed that on the newer models. Down here I keep pretty much empty. Nothing crazy. Little day use area, seat pedestal that goes up all the time anyways. Passenger tackle. This right here is actually broken, but it's a 3D printed mount for a catch board. So I can actually bust that out. It's hard to get to because I'm all disorganized in here, but it is what it is. So when it was working, my catch board would sit right down there like that. We'd keep it out. Some issues I have with running a board like this is that when it's out in the sun, it's hot. It's real hot. So as we can go into my tackle compartment here, I need to clean it out, but I keep normally a bag of soft plastics out, Most of my other soft plastics are all organized down in here. I throw all of my containers in here. I try to keep, because this is an aluminum boat, it still tends to sweat and get a little bit of moisture in here, which is something I would, you know, tell anyone who's going to get one of these. I've learned to mitigate it very, very well, even storing the boat outside with a cover. You know, it has the factory cover on it. I put a second cover on top of it to make sure that any of that's mitigated as it goes. It's just kind of one of those things that ends up being super helpful over time. Another thing I've learned to do is, because things tend to sweat a little bit, we try not to put our rods away when they're still wet. Same thing as I don't put any of my baits back in the containers when they are wet. I'll show that here in a second. Let me get all this stuff put back away here. And then I'll go through this later. Same thing, camera poles go in there when I'm not using them. I think what I'm gonna do is print another holder for the catch to go right there and take this one off. So that'll be a little bit easier. I don't need two boards in the boat. And go up here. So this is rod storage. I have rods out, so there's just kind of some spare stuff there. One thing that I did in the older model boats is I 3D printed and made a pass-through instead of using the rod tubes. And then, you know, there's still storage up down here as well. So it goes about 1.5 feet back there. You can fit some 3700 size containers or whatever you need in there. Cooler, that's just a cooler. You can put whatever you want in there, or you cannot. I don't give a shit what you do. And then this one ends up being the E-box for the live scope. This is actually a cell phone booster from when I used to do streaming. Life vests, screens, rain gear. The only compartment I really have a complaint on in this boat is this step one. It still tends to get wet. All we end up keeping in here is, you know, med kit, spare scale that may or may not work, G-juice, bug spray, another set of grips, a whole lot of sunblock. You got all your pliers and stuff here. Kind of keep everything out of the way. I don't know how I feel about this location. This one's fine. This one tends to get kicked around a lot, so that's why you see we don't actually have anything right up here. This front spot, if you have a set of pliers in there that's too tall, like this one, right? This one's real good because it can come open. So you have this set of pliers that can get kicked around, so we kind of end up pushing everything to the back or keeping lower profile stuff in that one. Here's another piece that's not standard on my boat that I changed. Is I 3D printed this to set up different for passenger rods. It allows a little bit more configuration. She would never have this many rods in there. And then I also put it so it has just a little bit of a track, so you can use a rod holder or whatever if we're not bass fishing, if we're using a bobber or whatever. And then going up front is pretty standard, just dual mount for everything. I tend to keep all of my baits in a little tray here, which is just magnet on, so I can take that off, put stuff away, even though I never do. Again, cell phone booster, which is back in the back of the boat. Everything else is pretty standard. I'm gonna remake this piece at some point in time because I want to configure it to put these a little bit further back and try to put these power pole, or I guess Talon, Raptor, whatever they are. I had Talons before, these ones are Raptors. Put those the stomp boxes back there, which would be a little bit better. Another for the Garmin, I moved this pole so it hits the edge of my boat, being aluminum, so that way it kind of sits there. I don't have to worry about putting my trolling motor down on any rods. It's not digging into the carpet. I don't have to worry about anything breaking like that. just of the availability. I think if I had a glass boat, I wouldn't do that, but it is what it is there. That's kind of a quick rundown. I wanted to go through and put that together for this boat, because I think there's a lot of people that I see, especially on Facebook, that are like, oh, I'm going to do it this way or do it this way. And I am no expert. I literally make shit up as I go. It's what I've been doing for a living for a long time. There's shit on the screen. So I kind of see something I don't like. I try to fix it. This is my third year in this boat. Like I said, I had an 1880 before this, which was an awesome boat. But it's one of the things of, if you're comparing those, and Trish is with me fishing probably 90% of the time or more, the bigger boat, at least in the Vexus models and a lot of other models too, gives her so much more space in the back. You're not tripping over stuff. Even the smaller model Vexus have those big compartments in the back, which are awesome. You know, she can bring as much stuff as she wants. It doesn't matter. It doesn't get in the way. It's not sitting out anywhere. But having an extra foot on the rear deck, and then, like, we looked at the 1980s as well, having the extra foot on the front deck is great. None of my rods are, you know, hitting her as she's trying to sit down, because I can't put my shit away. But she also has an extra foot in the back. You know, there's nothing there that's kind of interfering with anything. Everyone's got their own space. Nobody's bumping into each other outside of when you're trying to grab the net and standard things like that. Who knows? That's pretty much what I wanted to go down, run over in one take on the video. If anybody has questions, let me know. If anybody has solved some of these problems, or set up stuff differently, yell at me, because nothing's perfect. There are a lot of things that I want to change, things that I think could be more efficient as I go. There aren't a whole lot of things I don't like too much. It's just learning to work with them. So, yeah, if you guys have any opinions on that or any ideas, let me know.